AI is creating chaos in the retail industry with improved abilities to scrape data from competitors' websites. It's creating a no win situation for all involved, including us consumers. This caught our attention because the retail space has been early adopters of XR or extended reality and AI. It makes sense because anyone who sells online has the most immediate gain to new technologies, well, the new technologies that work. So the industry is heavily incentivized to adopt technology as soon as it rolls out. Welcome to Becoming Dauntless, the podcast where we talk about what it means to be dauntless as entrepreneurs, as parents, and friends. I'm Laura Elliott, the CEO and co-founder at Dauntless XR.
And I'm Sophia Lazaro, the other co-founder and chief product officer here at Dauntless XR. Together, we strapped our tech startup from a pitch deck and an idea to $1 million a year business.
Each episode, we explore the latest trends, breakthroughs, and stories from the front lines of business ownership. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, an engineer, a business owner yourself, a seasoned professional, or just curious about the future of technology, there's something here for you.
Join us as we uncover what it means to be dauntless.
I'm Laura Elliott. I'm the co-founder of Dauntless XR. I'm joined today by my fellow Dauntless co-founder, Sophia Lazaro, and our guest, Elaine Kwan, the co-founder of Kwontified. Elaine, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And before founding Kwontified, Elaine worked in digital commerce at Amazon, McMaster-Carr, and Convoy, where she learned what separates the brands that barely survive from those that dominate the marketplace. A decade later, after co-founding Quantified and stepping into the role of managing partner, Elaine has built on that foundation to partner with global fashion, beauty, and CPG brands to drive real sustainable growth. Today at Quantified, they are pioneering agentic commerce and building infrastructure like Agentic Commerce Protocol, or ACP, to give clients a first mover advantage with AI that's highly technical, but focused on what matters, and that's sustainable growth and an elevated customer experience at every touch point. We're going to get into a lot of everything we just covered in there, but as XR developers here at Dauntless, we see a lot of use cases in e-commerce, particularly for things like virtual try-ons, virtual see-in space, but we aren't retail experts ourselves per se, and we're excited to have Elaine on to give us some insights as to what's going on in that industry and how those of us that have e-commerce in our business as part of our business, how we can prepare for the upcoming retail season and get ahead in 2026. So once again, Elaine, welcome to the podcast. And could you start by telling us a little bit more about yourself and Quantified and how you started the company?
Yeah, sure. So again, my name's Elaine Kwan. I'm a managing partner here at Quantified. And my journey, I'd say, really started at Amazon. So after working in digital commerce at companies like McMaster-Carr, I saw a pattern, which was that established companies and brands were struggling to keep up with the incredible growth of digital marketplaces. So Amazon was seeing triple digit growth year over year, but the companies that were funding that growth were often barely breaking even because of the complexity, the growing terms and fees. So my co-founder, Jordan Taylor, and I saw that opportunity gap. And for me, it was also personal. My father was an entrepreneur and an inventor, and I know that a company like Quantified would have helped his company navigate the complex retail maze much more effectively than the tools and services that were available during his time. So we wanted to build a business that democratizes access to consumers. And if you have a great product, you shouldn't be held back by the maze of logistics, algorithms, forecasting, and ad tech. So our goal is to partner with brands and help them truly own their success in the most competitive retail environment.
That was so interesting that there's that conflicting dynamic of one is growing at the expense of the other. Could you tell us a little more about what you're seeing happen in retail with AI now?
I would say right now here we're in the Q4 season of 2025, the most disruptive trend is the rise of agentic commerce. So, meaning AI is no longer just answering questions, giving you research about what products to buy, but it's actually completing the action of purchasing on your behalf. So, we saw this with ChatGPT's instant checkout that recently launched. And TechCrunch, I think, just recently talked about how AI-assisted e-com is expected to grow over 500% this holiday season alone. And so what we're seeing here is a fascinating and huge turn of how e-commerce is not just changing the way we buy, but just thinking about consumption overall. Number one, there's a new storefront. There's a new front door for customers, right? Which is now when you are working with an LLM, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whoever, and you ask, okay, find me the best running shoes. It's going to give you an item with the buy button right there in the chat. So it bypasses a search engine, it bypasses brands' websites. And although it's only available to right now with Etsy, they are looking to expand to Shopify fairly soon, which means millions of brand websites. Skims, Spanx, Glossier, I think are right up there, will be able to be purchased from AI. And so this kind of beckons the next piece of what is becoming incredibly important within e-commerce and AI, which is generative engine optimization, GEO, now going to be replacing SEO.
That's so interesting because the retail environment has always been a dynamic environment, but the number of people who are working at these brands who think about the look and feel of the website, the copy on every part of the checkout experience, to have all of that stripped away from your ability to communicate and set expectations with the customer. And now it's an interface that you don't control what it looks like, what it sounds like, what products it's putting your product next to, right? Because I mean, there's teams and teams of people who work on these in-house recommendation engines in Amazon to like show you other related products and other companies like it. That's a big, very rapid shift. I mean, these tools are only, what, 2 years old, but I mean, the shift that you're talking about is happening today. How do retailers who have thought for such a long time about the shopping experience in a specific way, how do they navigate this like very fundamental change?
It is throwing everybody for an interesting new loop. I think
Mhm.
the one consolation that all retailers and brands have is that we're all starting from more or less the same point, which is we all need to make these changes. Now, how quickly and how well retailers and brands make the change is going to be the determining factor as to, who's gonna get that first mover advantage, which is what we focus on as an organization. So I would say there are a few major areas that we'd want to focus on, starting of course with one, are you actually using generative AI as it exists today to improve your internal operation? That's just again something that we are have more experience with, more exposure to, that has already begun getting implemented into many companies. But I would say, so is your question, how should retailers begin incorporating or preparing for a more agentic commerce experience?
Yeah, for a world where they've thought so long about the brand touch points, and now most of those touch points are happening in an interface that they don't directly control. How do you think brands should be thinking about how they present themselves in a world where they don't know the full context of the conversation? They're not controlling the experience because it's not their website anymore.
Yeah, exactly. You're touching on a really important point. I'd say that one of the biggest risks as this transition occurs, which is losing the customer relationship to the AI agent or disintermediation. And so the solution at a high level is twofold. There needs to be a technical pivot and essentially be agent ready as a company. But then secondly, there's a huge opportunity for a creative pivot to build a human experience moat. And so both of these are key for companies in retail to continue to grow, to honestly survive and rebuild their growth strategy for how they're going to take advantage of all of the new ways that customers are going to be shopping.
What's an example of a technical pivot that would help a brand be more agent ready? Like, do some of the things that companies already do for the benefits of SEO, does that also help their GEO, or are they pretty distinct in what you're seeing?
It's a start, but I would say what we see for GEO, generative engine optimization, there are different tools and processes needed to take the content and copy that you have deemed to be the source of truth for your company, for your brand, and now making sure that AI agents can read them and that AI agents will use and cite that data as, again, the accurate source of truth for questions related to your company. It's a difficult process, right? We're not talking just what the description of your organization is. What are the ingredients for every single product you sell as a beauty brand? Or what is the breakdown of materials and ways to care for your sweater? So messy data means that the product is essentially invisible to AI. There will be a need for quite a bit of focus and investment on cleaning up the information that companies already have and then feeding it to AI in a way that will optimize their GEO. But the other piece as well is, and I think it is going to be even more time consuming, is embracing a true agentic infrastructure. Headless commerce has been a rising technical need for e-commerce brands for some time, but now it's become a necessity in order to really move into the agentic commerce era. And so having an API first architecture, allowing AI agents to transact directly with your inventory and payment systems, allowing your company to be ready for merchant to merchant transactions where an agent might buy from a competitor or a different company to complete a sale under your brand, and allowing the agents to actually truly work for your brand.
Join your team.
Yeah, I've seen that
Yeah.
on, I think it's like Nordstrom. You'll go shop online for Nordstrom and it's pulling brands from other websites, but it's showing it under their interface. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know Nordstrom carried. I'm blanking on like absolutely any of the brand names right now, but like I didn't know they carried this. And then when you look at the shipping, it's like, oh, this isn't coming from a Nordstrom warehouse or a Nordstrom store. It's coming direct from that retailer. It's not nearly as intelligent as what AI would allow to do. You mentioned something before the call about AIs doing dynamic pricing, or did I make that up?
No, it's true. It's an ongoing debate for those that are preparing for integration with agents, because the fact of the matter is, with the power of AI, dynamic pricing, meaning, really personalized pricing for you based on your buying patterns, how much you want an item, how much you can afford to pay for an item, is now possible. The problem, of course, is that when something like pricing intrinsically becomes personalized and is no longer standardized, it removes one of the most important pieces of the consumer journey, which is trust. And that's where, although in an instance like this, dynamic pricing is possible, should we? And so I would say pricing in general has always been a very interesting and important topic that we're just, we can get into it for hours. But I'd say at its current stage, in terms of what AI can do for companies, our general leaning is there's so many other ways that AI can help produce so much value for brands and companies within the retail space. Dynamic pricing, although important and interesting, should be put off for now, because again, I think the idea of building trust with the consumer is pivotal and needs to be protected.
Yeah, as soon as you started talking about that, I had to stop myself from like physically recoiling. I was like, dynamic pricing by person, like based on I don't like that. Like I had a reaction to that. It's good to hear people in the industry are also recognize that there are distinct downsides, right? Even if you can do it, should you do it? So if that's somewhere where you would guide other businesses kind of considering their e-commerce initiatives in Q4 and into 2026 away. You guide them away from incorporating AI into pricing. Where should they be using AI? What advice would you give a brand who is looking to scale in this new AI enabled e-commerce landscape?
The short answer is pretty much everywhere else. I mean, we start with supply chain, right? Operational backbone, making sure that we're using AI for predictive inventory modeling, not just for the brand.com, but for every single marketplace channel, which does require specific models that's sensitive to the peaks and valleys of each of those retail channels, seasonal year, and how they sell and what consumer demographics they typically work with, allowing personalized fulfillment. Allowing customers who maybe previously had a much more difficult time buying something, being able to source an item from the right retailer that will get it to them much sooner. And so being able to use AI to give them a smoother fulfillment experience, content creation and optimization, the productivity gains in allowing AI to automate some of the product listing work, which is often very time consuming. Even just creating variations, right, of the same creative asset at scale, being able to test which visual content is going to engage the consumer best, which then leads us to marketing efficiency and personalization. So I would say you should expect better, more interesting, more engaging ads in the years to come. So we're talking like ads that will message you something specific, not just to what you need, but to who you are, what stage of life you're in, where you're trying to go, and what it is that you're looking for, all factored into that message tailored for you. And so having AI quickly analyze, your behavior, your demographics and buying patterns to be able to create specific customer segments that are dynamic will allow us to have a much more, again, personalized experience and serving you something that is actually relevant and not something take a look at and say, not interested.
Your guidance would be to use AI to hone your message in on the individual, but not your pricing.
You still need to convince the consumer that you provide value in your product. And part of that conviction comes from, again, building trust. And building trust is something that, at least in our organization and in our general strategic initiatives, can be aided by technology, but it can't be replaced by technology. And so there's very much a delicate balance, even right now in the nascent era of AI that we're in, even right now, so many conversations by people about how they feel about AI and whether it is something they like or not, and how confusing that experience is. And so it's a very delicate balance that I think companies will need to adopt a standard around. But our strategic approach is use technology to enhance that experience of building trust. Do not use technology to erode the trust with the consumer.
That rings true to some of our experience of trying to incorporate AI into our own business. If there's things where you already feel like you have set processes and you know how to do them well, can AI help you do them a little bit faster or give you more variations in a more specific way? So if you were going to A/B test something, can you ABC test it? Can you A/B test it on a much smaller customer segment while you're parallel A/B testing something else? But like layering it into your core competencies and not asking it to do one of your core competencies for you. I don't know. I was just drawing a connection to just our personal experience of bringing AI into our business, even though it wasn't an e-commerce business, rings very true, I think, to the advice that you're giving here.
And I think to your point, and this is just us thinking ahead, but eventually we do expect a social backlash, right? Because there is so much convenience that is being provided as a result of the technology we have today and the technology that is to come as a result of AI. And when life becomes so optimized, you don't even have to leave GPT to buy the running shoes. You buy it right there and it's on its way to you. You don't have to input any information. You don't have to read any reviews anymore because GPT has summarized what your needs are and has already done the analysis to tell you, based on everything that you need for your body specifically, these are the best shoes. There's a bit of boredom, right, that comes into play. And I think that the joy of stumbling across something new, of discovery, I think is going to be something that people will crave, which is why, looking ahead, I think that there is a lot of opportunity for brands to tap into that desire. I mean, I think that's why we're seeing growth with certain companies like Duolingo and others now. People want challenges. They need some friction, right? We can't can't have a completely frictionless life.
We have a parallel that we have seen with augmented and virtual reality, and not specifically like with one of our products, but one of the one of the big use cases for VR has been recreating destinations. So maybe, if you have a complete 3D digital twin scan of the Louvre, you can go visit the Louvre from anywhere in the world. And people were like, oh, well, then people won't go in real life. Like that's going to kill tourism for that museum, which I think they have more tourists than they can handle right now. So that might not be a bad thing. But we aren't that concerned about that happening, because the way we see it is that the in-person experience becomes a premium luxury experience. You can recreate, an overwater villa in the Maldives, like in your living room right now. That doesn't mean that you're not also still going to go to the Maldives, right? And maybe there's something analogous that's going to happen with retail, like maybe the retail experience becomes, like you said, another way to connect with the brands. It becomes a little bit more of a premium thing, a little bit more community insider driven than what it is now. This is already something that exists, but like going and looking in vintage stores in London or Paris or wherever, and that like thrill of finding something that you can't get on the internet, like maybe we're just going to see that explode tenfold.
Right on the money, Lorley. That's actually the second part of what we generally advise, right, as part of the solution to being agent ready. So we talked about the technical pivot a little bit of GEO and having headless commerce, but the other piece, which I find incredibly fascinating and almost limitless as far as the opportunities go, is the creative pivot. And that's the human experience that you're kind of touching on. Like the solution isn't just technical, it's also about mastering the customer experience on your property, whether that's your website or otherwise. Owning the discovery process and building that loyalty is going to be more challenging than before. But I think with the advent of AI, it's also going to be more interesting than before. Now you can use, as you all know, better than me, AR, high touch content to really build a sense of experience and destination within a simple shopping trip. And the amount of storytelling that we can have is, I mean, the potential is untapped, in my opinion. What we were just mentioning earlier, adding friction as a feature, forcing the consumer to stop, smell the roses in a way that adds to their journey, allows them to become psychologically invested in what you all are providing, is a great way to build that relationship. And I think in that way, we're going to see AI and a lot of this technology help brands figure out how to build more connected communities. And I think that's another piece that is very much needed right now with the way we have all been globalized with all the technology in our hands. I think a lot of people are looking for community. A lot of people are looking for connection. And I think that is a huge opportunity that should be included as part of the strategy.
You give your customers and your community a way to seek you out, because what worked in the past where you could put out a lot of content and people would find you either through search or on a feed or on a billboard, AI is going to create so much noise that no matter how strong your signal is, how much content you're putting out that isn't AI generated or whatever, it might not be enough for people to find you. So giving them something where they can seek you out and an avenue to do that through like a creative mode or an IP mode is a really interesting concept that like I'm still wrapping my brain around, but it seems like it would be the logical way forward if there's any logic to be had in this AI tidal wave we're swimming in.
Yeah, you're again absolutely right. I feel like the creative mode is only as effective as the mission or the values that it's representing. So Costco is a great example of that. People love Costco because they understand no matter what they're buying from Costco, it's not crap. It's not priced to the highest possible dollar and cent degree that they can afford. And they know that if it doesn't work out, it's okay. But those first two pieces of quality and a certain transparency in pricing, again, that standard pricing that they know, hey, Costco is going to take a profit, but it's not a huge profit. It's profit on top of their cost. And I can trust that. Goes a really long way. And so for them, I would find the way that they have built their moat to be just such a brilliant example that I think more companies should try and structure into how they prepare. Because when you have that kind of moat, again, your values, all of that creative pivoting that you're doing, it's going to speak volumes and actually get to your consumer.
Calling back to our earlier point, if you also think that Costco uses friction as a feature,
100%.
because when you started
Have you
talking
been to
about
a
Costco, I
Costco
was like,
parking lot?
I actually think they lease places with terrible parking lots. I think Trader Joe's does the same thing because the crowded parking lot also creates this kind of perception of the experience you're going to have because it has a membership. So there's almost this like class status associated with it and all these things. I think that
Yeah.
they make it kind of difficult to transact online. Like you have to be logged in before you can see pricing, and like who's going to browse and have an online shopping experience if you can't see pricing, right? Like normally,
Yeah.
like, and that's very counterintuitive to how a lot of other ecom would approach, like not forcing you to log in early on in the experience. But yeah, I think they're a good example brand for all the reasons you said, but I also think they're a good example of using friction strategically because all of those points of friction are, oh, well, I can't show you pricing because I need to know that you're a member first. And yeah, you have to fight through a certain circle of the Hunger Games in our parking lot because our stuff is so popular because we have brand names and we have them in bulk and we're the only ones that will sell them at this size at this price. I do think they're one of those brands that, to your point, has friction as a core component of their moat, but in a way that makes you feel like you're like living a shopping experience that, I don't know, matters.
And they can afford that friction because they have proven to their customer that the value is there, right? Like they're saying, hey, we know you've got to fight a few other cars to get in here, and we know you have to be a member, but guess what? You can get those Lululemon leggings at a price that you cannot get anywhere else, quite literally. Plus, you can buy your glasses, you can get some food, and you can buy some flights for a price that you know you can trust. And so I think they've used it very strategically, very well. And now you see just a lot of people who are devout Costco shoppers, right? They know that that's their first place to go when they think of something because they know they can trust it.
And the brands that you've kind of mentioned, like Costco's huge. It's a huge business, it's a huge brand. With all of the changes we're seeing with generative AI, engine optimization, with being able to buy things. I thought Shopify was already connected to OpenAI, but I guess not yet. You have time. I think that this creates an opportunity for smaller businesses to go back to the early days of Google search words, like early days of search engine optimization, or are the small businesses just going to get steamrolled in this? Like what's your kind of perspective on that?
I think the larger challenge that companies are going to reckon with is not so much the doing as it is knowing what to do. And that's why it's really important to talk about it. It's really important to share how companies are experimenting and succeeding or even failing with their adoption of agentic commerce because we are all in a new era. And although I have certain ideas and we're testing out certain strategies that seem to be pointing us in the right direction, the fact of the matter is like this is all still very nascent. And so I would say every company's got a good shot of using this to their benefit and being an early adopter, but they have to be unafraid to try and really start experimenting. There are a couple companies out there that have definitely used AI in different ways that have been really, I think, very powerful, whether it's creating an experience with AI. I mean, AR companies like Sephora or L'Oreal have done very successfully. They've made that virtual try-on a functional benefit that adds to the value of why a customer would buy from them. So it's more than just the product you're getting. You're also getting the benefit of, oh, well, at Sephora, I will ensure that I know this shade matches me and I don't have to worry about that. You also have, again, companies that make custom product that add that friction really strategically, like we were talking about. Third Love, Function of Beauty are some good call outs where they have unique products that require the customer to give their input and feedback. So the customer feels invested in co-creating that product with the company. It's theirs. It's something that only they can have. And then of course, I know we kind of touched on this earlier, but retailers who are using AI to master their inefficiencies, although it's not as sexy, it's more of the invisible advantage. The fact of the matter is that the companies who do that will see fairly immediate and substantial gain.
And those are all very different businesses, different brands. They're all approaching it kind of in their own way. We've talked about all of these things that you can do with AI and that brands need to be doing or looking to do. What are you able to help brands with through Kwontified? We didn't really talk about what you guys actually do in-house.
We are essentially the technology and the people behind running and building different marketplace businesses for brands all over the world. I'll take a step back before the advent of AI and its role in e-com. But even before that, marketplaces were presenting such a maze of difficulty. And you're talking about your favorite, largest, most famous fashion brand, they're all struggling with figuring out, okay, well, I have to work with X retailer. I cannot afford not to be on this retail site, but the amount of hoops you have to jump through, the number of people you have to hire, the technologies you need to adopt just to sell on this one retailer is pretty strenuous for most companies. And it can be a risk. How do you know if you're hiring people to build a team for, let's say, running Amazon? How do you know it's the right people? How do you know these people together will know what to do to make sure that this is going to work out? And you multiply that by 3, 5, 10 channels. It is an enormous undertaking. And so what we are essentially, we are the technology and the team. And we can provide that at scale because not only do we know what to do, and we know these industries, we know fashion, beauty, CPG, food and beverage, but we know and partner with all of these marketplaces in a very close relationship. And so the retailers, the marketplaces give us benefits of being experts on their platform. We often are privy to betas and features before anyone else gets them. And we also are able to discuss in depth how to collaborate with all the marketplaces so that our brands have the best visibility, the best placements, and just are able to stay at the peak of what each of the marketplaces are doing to grow. On the brand side, they benefit from having a partner that's not only taking care of all the strategy, the growth, and the headache, but we also can share data as to how they are doing in comparison with all of their competitors, and do it in a way that's not biased, which is very difficult when you're working directly with the retailer. They want you to think a certain way. Having a neutral party that you trust, who cares about your goals and your growth and wants you to understand how you're doing in the pantheon of this channel of, let's say, beauty, has been very helpful. And so we serve as that role today. With the rise of ACP, I would say that role will continue, but it will evolve in a much more technical path, which is what we're building out and starting to advise clients on now.
One of the things that, given my background in retail, that I could see being really unique, and I'm curious if this is something that you hear from your clients, is that unbiased neutral party point of view on where you sit in this anonymized data, and that data being cross-channel, because so often that data is only looked at within a specific channel, but most customers are engaging with your brand across channels. So it's really not enough to only look at it from one marketplace's analytics. That doesn't actually tell you everything that you need to know.
100% on the money. You got it, Sophia. And that's why, I would say our most common growth and expansion map for clients is, they'll start with their largest or most problematic channel domestically, and there is sufficient traction, growth achieved. The next question is, okay, well, we'd love to be on Walmart, on Target. We've always wanted to sell on Zalando throughout all of the countries in the EU. Well, we'd love to break into Latin America. Mercado Libre would be a fantastic partner to work with. And we're able to do that at scale with efficiency and with the understanding of how to do this well, and with, I'd say, just again, as much operational and cost efficiency as can be had.
And if someone's listening and they're like, okay, I want that, like I would like that full experience, is there a particular size of company that you work with? Like I imagine you'd have to be of a at a certain stage before it makes sense to partner with a company like Kwontified.
Typically partner with two kinds of companies. The first are more established brands, think the brands that, you grew up with, wearing, buying, seeing, all throughout, usually already publicly traded or owned by larger parent conglomerates, or, may already be available internationally. The second type of company are, typically digitally native, younger companies that are often VC backed, and they cannot afford to not navigate the marketplace spaces well. And so that's typically where we focus, but it's always a two-way street. Something we've touched on in this conversation, which is trust, is number one for us, because as you can imagine, if you're taking on a partner and you're willing to allow them to help run a fairly significant opportunity of business for you, you need to make sure that both sides can see eye to eye. And so that's something that we not only take seriously, but we take as quite an honor. And so every time somebody approaches us, we always like to just have a conversation and a deeper understanding of what that business is, where it is today, and where it's trying to go.
I imagine that the market, especially for the digitally native VC-backed brands, like to try to do this yourself would be such a huge undertaking. And you've got investors that are counting on you. You literally can't afford to screw it up. That's really good to know that solutions like this exist because, even though Sophia came from retail, I have been so hesitant to start any company that has physical products because of the logistics of things like that scare me.
Blame you.
You get a little bit spoiled in that regard in software. You're like, unlimited SKUs, no storage, just here's a license, go for it. Now that you know that things like Kwontified exist, maybe it's not as scary.
Something really interesting that I think is going to completely change with the incoming of AI and agentic commerce is advertising. I mean, we kind of touched on marketing efficiency, real-time ad optimizations. Like we know that, but I think what's really interesting is how ads altogether might get completely replaced. So there's, technology using AI that will make the videos you watch, TV, movies, just influencer content, instantly shoppable from the experience, the medium you're using without the need for ads. And so I think the medium of digital advertising is probably going to see one of the biggest shifts of all of the topics we talked about today. And I think with that means the way we, for us, marketing folks, the way we view marketing efficiency will also have to shift pretty dramatically. So I'd say in more recent times, people would look at things like cost of acquisition as an important metric, ROAS and whatnot. But I think we need to really start focusing on customer lifetime value, because with all the touch points that customers are receiving from any brand, one, measuring that is going to get more difficult and challenging. But number two, understanding the value of what that customer has to go beyond just one transaction or what one ad produces. You have to think about the full experience of what a person is getting from you as a brand, and finding a better way to measure the holistic lifetime value of that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad if the entire advertising model changed. As someone who came from like a journalism background and publishing, like it's not a model I've ever been completely in love with. It made me think yesterday I got early access to Sora. That's the kind of TikTok-esque app that only has AI generated content on it. When you sign up or when you log in, you have to give it your likeness. So you let it record your voice and your face. And then once you're done that, you have the ability to say who gets to use your likeness, because you can let everyone make videos with your face. And I set it to just me because the thought, like, well, for one, I don't want randoms using my face for things. Like that was weird. But also I was like, I bet they'll try to put your face in advertising to yourself. Here's how you would look in this thing. Going back to my Maldives example, here's you on a sunbed on your overwater villa. Wouldn't it be great if this actually was you? That one might work on me, not gonna lie. But The rest, I'm like, no, I don't want that.
That would
Talk
work on me
about
too.
yeah, talk about hyper personalized ads. That's crazy. I wonder how long it's going to be until the like antithesis comes out. So like a social media where you can't have any AI generated content. I don't think it'll be long.
Great point. Yeah.
If they could filter it out. Like, I'm sure Meta
True.
platforms would slap an AI generated banner or whatever on stuff if they could detect it well enough. Although, what I really want is for LinkedIn to be able to detect when someone puts an AI generated comment, because that just
Yeah.
needs to go.
Plus 100
Anyway.
on that, please.
If anyone out there wants to
gosh.
develop that particular innovation, you have at least 3 users right here.
Let us know.
Let us
We'll
know.
be your guinea pigs.
If listeners want to connect with you, where can they find you and where can they learn more about Kwontified?
Please feel free to reach out on our website, kwontified.com. And you can also reach me on LinkedIn, and you can follow our Kwontified Instagram.
Amazing. Yeah, don't leave any AI generated comments on LinkedIn though. That is an unfollow. But no, thank you for joining us today. And for those listening, if you liked this episode, be sure to check out this one next. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.